Everything for the Dallas Cowboys changed in a matter of seconds. I mean, literally seconds. Following what was just a completely disastrous, soul-crushing finish to the 2025 campaign, the front office finally looked in the mirror, and what they saw was terrifying. They realized that their championship window wasn't just closing, it was violently slamming shut. Welcome to NFL Nexus, your home for the deepest, most cinematic dives into the gridiron. Now, before we unpack the massive, high-stakes gamble currently unfolding in Dallas, do me a favor. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below on what you thought of this breakdown. And hey, if you really want to elevate your football IQ and support what we do here, consider becoming an NFL Nexus channel member. Okay, let's dive into this. Because right now, the Dallas Cowboys are attempting something absolutely unprecedented this offseason. We're talking about a total, unapologetic defensive overhaul designed to completely rewrite their immediate future and, frankly, salvage the prime years of their core roster before it's too late.
So here is the multi-billion-dollar question that is currently hanging over AT&T Stadium like a dark cloud. Can a radically rebuilt defense save a 30-year legacy? We are looking at a franchise that has been defined by immense, suffocating expectations and absolutely agonizing playoff failures since Dak Prescott was literally 3 years old. Let that sink in. The weight of that iconic star on the helmet, it is heavier right now than it has ever been in the modern era of football. We aren't just talking about a team looking to, incrementally improve its roster on the margins. No, we are talking about a historic sports empire desperately trying to stop a catastrophic hemorrhage. They are betting absolutely everything. Their premium draft capital, their salary cap flexibility, their executive reputations, and yes, their jobs, all on fixing one single side of the football. And as we carefully look back at the wreckage of last season, you're going to begin to understand exactly why they smashed the panic button.
Because here is the horrific paradox of the 2025 Dallas Cowboys. It's almost hard to believe. On one hand, you have an absolute juggernaut of an offense. I mean, they were scoring an incredible 26.6 points per game. You have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens out there stretching the field, absolutely terrorizing secondaries every single Sunday. You have a highly balanced run game keeping defenses totally honest. They were elite in literally every measurable offensive category. But it simply didn't matter. Because on the other side of the ball, the defense was a complete and utter disaster. Just a broken sieve. They completely squandered a prime year of offensive brilliance, limping to a devastating 7-9-1 record under head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Just imagine that for a second. Imagine being an offense that practically guarantees 27 points every single time you step onto the field, and you still can't break a 500 win percentage. The friction in that locker room, the sheer frustration of doing your job perfectly only to watch the other side of the ball give it away, it was boiling over week after week. And the immediate consequence of this historical collapse, it was swift, it was brutal, and it was absolute. Matt Eberflus was out. Look, when an offense performs at a legitimate championship level and the team still finishes under 500, heads are going to roll. And the defensive coordinator is almost always the first casualty. The front office realized very, very quickly that they couldn't just tweak the scheme around the edges, they couldn't just run it back and pray for better injury luck. No, they needed to tear the entire defensive house down to the studs. The merciful end to the season meant an immediate execution of the defensive hierarchy. The Eberflus era in Dallas was officially over, entirely defined by a tragic, recurring inability to get crucial game-defining stops when the season was on the line. Enter Christian Parker, a first-time defensive coordinator stepping into what might easily be the highest-pressure coaching job in the National Football League today. Parker isn't just bringing a new playbook to town, he's bringing a completely different, highly complex philosophy to Texas. He's installing the core elements of the renowned Vic Fangio system in Dallas. Now, if you know football, you know we're talking about a scheme specifically designed to ruthlessly limit explosive passing plays. It's designed to confuse elite quarterbacks with highly complex pre-snap too-high shells and rely heavily on the defensive front four to generate organic, devastating pressure without having to constantly send the blitz. But here is the catch. To run a system this intricate, you need a very specific, highly versatile type of personnel. And the Cowboys front office knew they had to give Parker an absolute war chest of talent to make it actually work. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this overhaul. This isn't just a standard free agency period. This is a hostile takeover. The Cowboys were aggressive to the point of sheer desperation. They brought in heavy, proven hitters across every single level of the defense. They secured game-wrecking edge rusher Rashawn Gary.
They traded for superstar safety Caleb Downs. They brought in linebacker Malachi Lawrence. They completely reinforced a bleeding secondary with Jalen Thompson and P.J. Locke. They beefed up the interior trenches with Jonathan Bullard, L.T. Overton, and a true run-stuffing nose tackle in Otito Ogbonnia. They added critical sideline-to-sideline speed at the second level with G. Winters and Jyshawn Barham, and fortified the perimeter with Kobe Durant. Guys, this is an absolute avalanche of resources being poured into one unit. Whether through blockbuster trades, massive free agency checks, or the draft, the front office sent a blindingly clear message. The defense will not be the reason we fail in 2026. And let me tell you, the rest of the league is absolutely taking notice of this violent shift in team building. ESPN's Matt Bowen summed it up perfectly. He noted the sheer volume of upgrades and stated point blank, this team should compete for the NFC East title. The Cowboys have officially been named one of the top 5 most improved teams heading into the 2026 season. Think about that. Pundits who enthusiastically left Dallas for dead just months ago are suddenly recalculating their entire offseason models. Analysts at Bleacher Report are openly saying Dallas is trending back toward true contender status. Sports Illustrated is projecting a hard 10-win floor for this rebuilt roster. The mainstream narrative is shifting violently. But here is where the story takes a truly fascinating turn. Because despite all those massive household names, despite the tens of millions spent on guys like Rashawn Gary and Caleb Downs, the true ultimate ceiling of this defense actually rests on the shoulders of 2 players flying completely under the national radar. These are the defensive X factors. 2 second-year players drafted in 2025 who are quietly preparing to emerge from the shadows and dictate the entire future of this franchise. Look, you can spend all the money in the world in free agency, but championships in the modern salary cap era of the NFL, they are won when your drafted rookie contract players make that massive leap from raw developmental prospects to lethal starting caliber weapons. And Dallas has 2 hidden gems who are about to do exactly that. First, let's look at Donovan Ezeruoku. He's a second-year edge rushing linebacker who owner Jerry Jones had massive, perhaps incredibly unrealistic expectations for during his rookie year. Now, on the surface, a casual fan might quickly look at his rookie stat line, 9 starts, only 2 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, and unfairly label him a disappointment or even a bust. But that is exactly why you have to look deeper than the box score. The tape tells a completely different, far more terrifying story for opposing offenses. Pro Football Focus just named Ezeruoku to their highly coveted 2026 NFL All-Breakout team. Why? Because behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, he was consistently displaying tremendous bend. He has incredibly quick and violent hands, and an explosive first step that veteran offensive tackles were genuinely struggling to contain. And the most compelling proof is right here, 66.8. That was Ezeruoku's PFF pass rush grade as a rookie. You really have to understand the context to appreciate this number. Despite sliding to the second round in the draft, and despite fighting through a completely chaotic, disjointed, and poorly coached defensive environment last year, he posted the second-best pass rush grade among all qualified newcomers at his position in the entire league. That is hard, undeniable proof that the underlying mechanical traits of a superstar edge rusher are present in his game. He wasn't always finishing the sacks, sure, but he was consistently beating his man off the snap. And now, operating under the radar opposite a veteran monster like Rashawn Gary, who absolutely demands double teams, Ezeruoku was going to see isolated one-on-one matchups that he is perfectly primed to exploit. Let's dive into his deeper metrics to really see how this builds a terrifying profile for opposing offenses. We're looking at an 8.1% run-stop rate, placing him in the 85th percentile of all edge defenders. A 62.8 PFF run defense grade, putting him comfortably in the 73rd percentile. He isn't just some situational pass-rushing specialist who gets pushed around on first down. He sets a brutal, disciplined edge in the run game. And look at this sheer disruption. 28 total quarterback pressures, tied for 4th among all rookie edge rushers. 29 run stops, the 3rd most in his entire draft class. 40 total tackles. He played in all 17 games, showing incredible durability. Now, he is currently recovering from off-season labrum surgery, but once he hits training camp fully healthy, this rare combination of run-stuffing violence and high-ceiling pass rush upside is going to make him an irreplaceable cornerstone of Christian Parker's new defensive front. Then, we pivot to the secondary, and our second heavily scrutinized hidden gem, cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr. This is a profound story of sheer athletic resilience. The Cowboys knew they were drafting injured goods in 2025. Revel was coming off a devastating torn ACL. Anyone in the media or the fan base expecting him to magically step onto an NFL field as a rookie and immediately become a lockdown all-pro star was kidding themselves. He was thrown to the wolves in a defense completely ravaged by injuries. He was playing behind a defensive line that absolutely could not pressure the opposing quarterback, all while physically adapting to the blistering, unforgiving speed of the NFL on a surgically repaired knee. His rookie season wasn't a disappointment, guys. It was a grueling trial-by-fire adaptation period that he simply needed to survive. But internally, inside the building, the narrative is absolutely electric. Cowboys executive vice president Stephen Jones actually let it slip to the media that new defensive coordinator Christian Parker is already a massive fan of Siobhan Revelle. The front office believes intensely in his breakout potential. When Parker looks at Revelle's tape, he doesn't see a struggling, hobbled rookie. He sees an absolute prototype for his specific, demanding defensive scheme. He sees a highly physical, aggressive corner who isn't afraid to mix it up in the run game, a player who possesses a very specific, highly coveted physical trait that is completely eluded and frankly plagued the Dallas secondary for years. And that specific trait is represented perfectly by this staggering number, 12.8%. That is Siobhan Revelle's missed tackle rate from his rookie year. Less than 13% on 35 total tackles through 7 games played. I need you to really think about that context. A rookie coming off a catastrophic knee injury, showing a fearless willingness to get his hands dirty, step up into the box, and give a ball carrier an absolute open field throttling. This level of tackling efficiency is incredibly rare for a modern NFL cornerback. We all know that Cowboys have been utterly haunted by missed tackles in the open field, right? Giving up those back-breaking yards after the catch that literally lose football games. Revelle's brutal, efficient tackling completely solves a long-standing fatal issue for this team. If he and Ezeruaku make the leaps expected of them, this defense doesn't just become average, it rockets straight into the top 10. So the crucial overarching point of this entire explainer is this. What happens when you pair a newly elite, top 10 defense with an offensive unit that already drops nearly 27 points a game in its sleep? You trigger the ultimate consequence, a massive foundational paradigm shift for the team's most polarizing and heavily scrutinized star, quarterback Dak Prescott. This radical defensive overhaul fundamentally changes the entire trajectory of his career and his legacy. For years, Dak has played under an impossible microscope, bearing the brutal brunt of the blame for every single Dallas failure. But the reality of what he has actually been asked to do is finally coming to light. Listen to Pete Prisco from CBS Sports. He recently went on the record and passionately stated, he's the most underappreciated, underrated player in the National Football League, and if they had any sort of defense, he would be that much better. Prisco is taking the mainstream hot take narrative and challenging it head-on. He's exposing the actual mathematical root of the Cowboys' failures. It wasn't Dak Prescott holding them back. It was the undeniable fact that Dak was essentially playing with one hand completely tied behind his back. He was forced to be absolutely perfect because the defense was bleeding points every single Sunday. I mean, just look at these elite, incredible stats from his 2025 campaign. Dak completed an exceptional 67.3% of his passes. He threw for a staggering 4,552 passing yards. He tossed 30 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. These are absolute masterclass numbers, and he did this while playing desperate, hyper-anxious football to constantly cover for an awful defense. Every single time he took the field last year, he knew he had to put up massive numbers, knowing a single stalled drive or 3-and-out could instantly spell disaster for their chances of winning. He carried this entire historic franchise on his back, and the underlying numbers prove unequivocally that he was absolutely not the problem. Which leads us to this massive, highly cinematic prediction that is quietly sending shockwaves through league circles right now. Dak Prescott will win the NFL MVP in 2026. Yes, you heard that right. With Christian Parker's heavily revamped defense, with explosive new weapons, and with the mental freedom to finally trust the other side of the ball, Dak is perfectly positioned to make a legitimate, undeniable run at the league's most prestigious individual honor. Honestly, the only thing keeping him out of the intense MVP conversation last year was his team's abysmal defense-driven record. If this rebuilt defense simply holds up their end of the bargain and Dallas easily makes the playoffs, the MVP narrative surrounding Dak Prescott will be completely impossible to ignore. Let's deeply contrast the psychology of the quarterback position from last year to this year. In 2025, Dak faced the suffocating, constant anxiety to score a touchdown on every single drive. If he threw a tight window interception, the game instantly felt over. If they punted the ball away, he knew the opponent was going to score. But fast forward to 2026, the shackles are off. He will finally be playing freely. He won't have to force the issue into double coverage just to keep pace in a wild shootout. He can patiently take exactly what the defense gives him, knowing full well that playmakers like Rashawn Gary and Donovan Izeruaku are going to get the ball right back for him. This massive reduction in mental pressure will drastically cut down his forced mistakes and elevate his overall efficiency to terrifying new heights. Zooming out to the massive scale of this upcoming season, it all comes down to a simple yet devastating formula. A top 10 defense, intelligently built on aggressive free agent splash signings and highly physical hidden draft gems, plus an elite high-octane offense returning all 11 starters, equals undeniable contender status. The math is right there in front of us, guys. The talent is undeniably on the roster. The defensive coaching staff has been completely overhauled with a proven elite system. All the intricate puzzle pieces are interlocking perfectly on paper right now. This isn't just a standard roster rebuild. This is a fully realized, incredibly dangerous championship blueprint being laid out in real time.
But, as we all know, paper doesn't win Lombardi trophies. And the historical legacy of pressure in Dallas is absolutely suffocating. Let's chart this agonizing history for a second, just to remember what's at stake. 30 years ago, that was the very last time the Dallas Cowboys actually won when it truly counted. Then, look at the recent past under Mike McCarthy. 3 consecutive 12-win seasons, all ending in heartbreaking, deeply embarrassing early playoff exits that left the fan base in total despair. And finally, the 2025 season, the disastrous 7-9-1 collapse that officially forced this current radical metamorphosis. They have been mercilessly teased with contending rosters before. The modern history of this franchise is entirely defined by massive, media-driven hype, followed immediately by devastating reality checks. Which ultimately brings us to the most gripping, inescapable cliffhanger of the 2026 NFL season, with a historic, multi-million-dollar defensive overhaul, rising hidden gems ready to break out, and an MVP-caliber quarterback who is finally free from the crushing burden of carrying the entire team on his back. There are absolutely no excuses left in Dallas. Can the Dallas Cowboys finally overcome their haunting playoff demons in 2026, or will the crushing, unbearable weight of expectation break them once again? That's the high-stakes story we are going to be obsessively watching all season long. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. Don't forget to subscribe to NFL Nexus, smash that like button, and let me know in the comments, do you buy the Cowboys as legitimate Super Bowl contenders, or is this just another classic off-season mirage? Support the channel by becoming an NFL Nexus member, and I'll see you in the next explainer.